Hello everyone, my name is Karli Fisher. I'm the Library Director at the Fort St. James Public Library. Welcome to our Q&A on Lady Black with Tim Hanley. Tim is a local author, originally from Ontario, currently living in British Columbia, and he has graciously given us his time to do this Q&A. All questions have been asked by local and nearby residents of Fort St. James. Tim, before we begin, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, thank you very much, Karli. I certainly appreciate the library hosting this. It's in these days of COVID, it's very difficult to get your work out there. So, no, I appreciate it, and I appreciate my readers for their interest and their questions. So, yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with what's being asked, but sure, go ahead, and I'll see if I can answer.
Just in case anyone is watching this and you haven't read or finished the book, there will be spoilers. We tried to keep any spoilerific questions near the end, but you may learn some things you don't currently know. So the first question is from Elizabeth. What kind of novels do you like to read, and were you inspired by any particular author?
Yes, that's Elizabeth Bain. She's my niece. Yes, actually, I think I was inspired by a group of authors. Uh, in the writing process, at least for me, tend to steal things a little bit from everybody, and then merge it with your own creativity. So there's a few of them. C.J. Box is an author from Wyoming, which I really like, and Craig Johnson, who has done the Longmire series, is another one. And Anne Cleves is a British lady. So yeah, they've all inspired me, and I've enjoyed their work very much.
C.J. Box is a very popular author at the library.
He has the Joe Pickett novels, and I like them. They move from they're very quickly moving and everything else. I think mine might be a little bit more slow paced, but my books tend to be a little bit longer than his. So, but yeah, he's a great author.
We have a lot of his books, so if anyone wants to check him out after reading Lady Black, you can stop by the library. The second question, also from Elizabeth. Some of the characters were named after family members. Did you bring out their personalities in these characters?
Well, no, not entirely. I they graciously allowed me to use their names, but no, I don't think so. The one character, Dr. Sophie Kilborn, in my book, she's a coroner. And as it happens, Sophie is actually studying to be working in the medical field, where her sister, Ella Allen, in the book, she is very much the motherly type, and that's rather fitting as well. So I suppose, in a sense, they did, but directly, no.
Elizabeth also asks, what is the most difficult part of writing from the perspective of a character who is the opposite sex?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I have to say, I didn't find it terribly difficult. I think when we look at ourselves as human beings, we all feel the same emotions: sadness, happiness, maybe a little bit of hatred, all of these things. So if you speak from the heart, I believe that these emotions, sex doesn't really comes into play. I think the real key is being honest with yourself and with your characters. And if they're mad, let them be mad. So I often have little inner dialogues with myself about what I said or wish I had said to somebody. And the beauty of writing is that it allows you over a period of time, maybe an entire afternoon, to thrash through a couple of paragraphs and try to get it what you think is just right. So, to be honest, I didn't find any difficulty in it at all.
Our next question is from Ella Davis. In the section about the author, you mentioned that you grew up in the goldfields of Kirkland Lake, Ontario, and lived in the Yukon. In what manner did these experiences influence your writing? Did it help with understanding that period of the time in the 1930s?
Yes. Well, thank you, Ella. Ella is my granddaughter, as some of you may not be aware, and is one of the main characters in the book. Yes, growing up in Kirkland Lake. Kirkland Lake, if you're not aware of Canada's gold mining history, is right up there. It's primarily all underground operations. Um, Mining was the very fabric of the town. So ever since I was a really little kid, it was always exploring the old mine sites and poking around. So I would say it influenced me greatly. And of course, when I got older, I worked for a period of about a year underground, right down at the 4,600 feet underground, and it used to take us about 3/4 of an hour to get to our work site. So it was something I was very aware of, and something I look back at now. I look back at it fondly. At the time, it was very difficult. And my father also worked in the goldfields during the Depression, during the 1930s, up at a place called Pickle Crow. So that mining history within our family, and I can still vividly recall my father talking about the Depression years. I think they influenced me greatly in the writing of this book.
Ella also asks, what was the process of coming up with the storyline? How did you do this? Did you write ideas down? Did you brainstorm it?
That's a question I asked myself, actually. I started out with a certain premise. If I can, it's sort of like maybe baking a cake or building something. You start out with an idea, but in this case, as you develop the characters, they tend to take you in a direction that maybe you didn't think you were going to go. Or if you are, it might circumvent. It goes about things the long way around. So you start out with an idea and you try to head in that direction. But to be honest, a lot of it was built as I went. The first 2 or 3 chapters set it up, and after that, kind of knew where I wanted to go, but how I was going to get there was a totally different question.
I thought that Ella might be related to you because she shared your name with someone in the book.
Her temperament came out in the book as well. She'll know what I mean.
Did you tell them you were going to put them in the book, or was it a surprise?
No, I told them. Yeah, yeah. And it was a long process. The book probably took me about a year to write. So they're always asking for updates. And, it's hard kind of keeping a secret. So, yeah. Yeah, no, they were there. They were aware.
The next question comes from Judy Goodall. Captain Sweeney of the Lady Black showed a high level of expertise when maneuvering in the river. How did you research this aspect and know the conditions of the river?
I've spent a lot of time in the Yukon. My wife and I lived up there when I was back a mounted policeman back in the 70s and 80s. And I've traveled back up there a lot. And I'll be honest, I've never missed an opportunity to take a tour of one of the stern wheelers. I find them to be very fascinating. I've actually spoke with an old Native American fellow. He's passed on now, but he was the last permanent resident of Fort Selkirk on the Yukon River. And he worked on one of the stern wheelers as a stoker. And it was very funny. I asked him, I recall this so well. I asked him one time, I said, Danny, I said, when you're on the river, I said, how long did it take you to get from here at Fort Selkirk up to Minto? And I was expecting, half a day, 2 days or whatever. And he looked at me and he thought a bit and he went, 5-cord wood. And it just showed me that things weren't measured in time in those days. It was about the work, about the effort, and about how much of that wood pile went from on deck into the boilers. So it was from talking to these people and doing the tours and doing some reading. It really helped to give me an idea of life on the stern wheelers on the Yukon rivers. And also, I have to say, I had the unfortunate incident one time when I was a mounted policeman here in Fort St. James. And I say unfortunate because we were dragging for a body of a man who had drowned in the canyon. And I was with one of our local fellows. He still lives here. And as we were dragging, our drag got caught in the bottom of the river, and it actually started to pull our boat down and swamp us, and we had to be rescued. So I remember that vividly as our boat swung as a pendulum, and I thought, well, okay, now when I read these stories of the stern wheelers, I understand what they're talking about. So a little bit of life experience came in there as well.
The next question is also from Judy. The setting for the gold mine, was it real or fictional? Is there an estimate as the number of these old abandoned mines in the Dawson City area?
There's not a lot of abandoned underground operations in the Yukon. The vast majority of the mining, especially in the Dawson area, was placer mining, so it's all done on the surface. Where I grew up in Kirkland Lake. It was what they called hard rock, which were underground operations. So in actual fact, there's very few of these abandoned mines in that sense. A lot of abandoned claims. My town of Porter's Landing, I was canoeing down the Stewart River about 20 years ago, and I came to the foot of Fraser Falls, and I really liked it. And I always kind of came back to that idea. I thought that would be a nice place to have a village. So when I decided to write the novel, and I knew it was going to be in the Yukon, I thought, well, what a great setting for my little fictional town of Porter's Landing. So that place is real. And you know, there are actually a lot of small abandoned communities in the Yukon, which were a place of a beehive activity during the mining days. And then when the gold was gone, so was the town a few years after. So yeah, there's an actual place for it, for Porter's Landing, and everything else is real.
Next question is from Sophie Davis. Is she a relative of yours as well?
Yes, Sophie Davis. In the book, she's known as Dr. Sophie Kilborn,
Yeah.
my pathologist. So yes.
She asks, what really inspired you to write this particular novel?
The truth of it is, as my grandkids were growing up, they were always interested in a lot of my old police stories and different investigations that I've been on. And I did have a lot of really good true adventures. So as I say in the beginning of the book under inspiration, eventually my stories, the well ran dry. So I thought, well, why not just create one? And that's what I did. So I've always enjoyed writing. And I thought, well, I'll mix in a little bit of police experience, a little bit of gold mining, and a little bit of adventure. And who doesn't like a little bit of a good love story as well, which is, you know, under the surface throughout the entire book. So, you know, it all worked.
Our next question comes from Joanne Leggett. Did you write the chapters consecutively, or did you jot them down as they came to you and then incorporate them later as you went along?
Well, thanks, Joanne. Joanne, I might add, was a longtime employee of our local RCMP detachment in here in the Fort St. James, and she's well aware of many investigations. No, I wrote them pretty much consecutively. They, as I was saying in the beginning, it's I guess I can relate it to building with Lego. You start out, you want to build a car. As a young boy, you want to build a car out of Lego. So you start putting the pieces together. You don't know exactly how it's going to fit, but you have an end game. And really, that's the way it is with this book. Pretty much, it was written consecutively. You know, as with a lot of novels, the scenes will switch. So while Dr. Kilborn and Sam Baylor, my investigator, are working on some aspect, you know, my villains might be off somewhere else doing a little something else. So, but overall, it pretty much, the story goes in chronological order, and the chapters were written more or less in that way. My second, I might add, I'm working on a second novel right now, and I'm not following the same pattern. I ended up jumping way ahead, and now I'm finding it difficult because I have to go back and say, okay, where does this fit? So first time's the charm.
The next question is from Elizabeth Hoy. Tim, your plotline is complicated, as all good mysteries should be. What is the process for weaving it together so that the guilty party is not readily apparent?
Elizabeth, that's an excellent question, because I didn't think it would be as difficult a process as it is. From the writer's standpoint, I know what's going on. I know where I want it to go. And the idea, or the difficulty is getting it down on paper so that you don't reveal too much to the readers. You've got to let them sort of figure it out. All the clues are there. Some of them are very small and everything else, but if you're a good detective, you can go back and say, oh yes, oh yes. So the trick is to give them enough, but not too much, and keep the storyline. You know, it's nice to take people down. I'll use an alleyway because alleyways come into my story in Dawson City. It's nice to take people down an alley, and sometimes it's a blind alley, and we go, oh, okay, we have to go back, and we're going to go over here. So it's a process for sure, and that part of it was a little more difficult than I thought. And now, after having read the book, I actually commented to Elizabeth. We spoke about it. She's an avid reader. Um, it it's hard. I kind of I'm sorry, I've kind of forgotten where I'm going with this thing, but yeah, it's a process for sure to try to get it just right and not reveal too much. So yeah.
The next question is also from Elizabeth. How much of your book is based on your experiences in the Yukon?
Quite a bit. Yes, quite a bit for sure. I've as I worked as I mentioned, I worked as a policeman up there. Oh, I hesitate to say how many years ago. But I've also been an avid traveler of the rivers. I've traveled, canoed the Yukon River, I think 3 times, uh, flown into various places. And so, and most, in fact, all of the trips that I've done up there, to be honest, have been solo. They've been by myself. So for many years, I used to memorize Robert Service poetry because I'm a great fan of his. But then I started getting together some book ideas. So, when you're alone in your canoe for hours on end, paddling down a never-ending waterway, you find ways to amuse yourself. So constructing a few book ideas was certainly one of them. So yes, the Yukon had a great influence on my writing, for sure.
Elizabeth also asks, it says under profile that you are a writer of socially responsible fiction. I haven't seen this phrase before. What does it mean?
My books, first of all, as obviously, as we say, they're a novel, so they're a work of fiction. I like to think of them as historical fiction because I mix in real historical events and blend in my characters with them. But I'm not. I don't want to denigrate, say, American movie styles, but I'm not all about explosions and violence for violence sake and explicit sex and that sort of stuff. I try to write from a perspective where we can use our imaginations, and we don't need to have some of these what I think is window dressing. So I try to keep things neat and clean, and history sometimes can get washed out over a period of time, but you can never go wrong if you keep it real, if you keep it true. People will appreciate that, I think, more than anything. So if you're going to write and say that you're writing historical fiction, then yes, we all know it's a novel, but keep it real. So that's what I think I mean by that.
The next one isn't a question, it's a comment, also from Joanne. This book was such a pleasant read without the explicit sex, harsh language, and violent content that I've found in so many other novels. I hope you continue in this manner.
Well, thank you, Joanne, for those kind words. And I did try to keep it that way for the reasons I just mentioned. Yeah, it's I'm going to, the work that I'm doing right now is like that. But at the end of the day, it's not a Nancy Drew novel either. So there is, it's a murder, and there's actually a couple of murders that take place in the thing, and there is some violence. But again, you don't have to vividly describe things. Sometimes it's the things that we imagine that we see out in the darkness can be more scary than the things that we see out in the darkness. Whether it be looking down a dark alley or going for a walk in the woods at the nighttime, it's the things that we don't know, or the things that we perceive that can often evoke our emotions. So this is what I try to do with my work. I've read some books, and I skip over it because it's just like, oh, this is just gratuitous sex, or it's gratuitous violence is put in there because the writer seems to think this is what people want. And I'm sure people do want it. It's just that I don't. So some people will enjoy my book and hopefully my books if the next one works out okay. But that's kind of what they're about, and I can't see myself ever changing that. So I appreciate fans, and I appreciate readers such as Joanne Leggett for having the same ideas that I do about it. So yeah, hopefully it continues to work. It should.
The next question is from Joanne. Did your son-in-law Jeff take offense of his characterization?
Oh, Well, I don't want to give that one away. It's you find out about it, I think, within a first page and a half of the novel. So even if somebody's mildly interested in the book, if they want to find out a little bit more about Jeff, they just have to read the first page. No, he didn't. I tried to fit most of my family into the book, and not everybody did. Some have very small parts. Some names fit for different characters. My grandchildren, and I'm happy to say this, are blessed with what I would call old-fashioned names, Sophie and Ella. And my grandson, whose name is Dawson, of course, and our story takes a great deal of our story takes place in Dawson City. So everybody has a little bit of a part to play. Didn't quite know what to do with Jeff, so yeah, he's in there for sure. And but he didn't take offense. No, Jeff has got a pretty thick skin. He's okay with it.
This question was submitted several times, so we just grouped them all together. How long was the process from creation of the story to having it out in print?
I guess this one, if I were to, I'd have to ballpark it. I'd say it was about a year and a half from the time I started writing it, and there were some periods in between that I took a little bit of time off. But what very much surprised me, and I think all new authors will either find this out if they're just going through the process, or if they've been through the process, they would certainly agree. From the time that you finish roughing out the novel until you can actually get the thing into print, all I can say is you need patience, which I don't have. It's a long time. Going through and working with an editor, getting things just right. I didn't have to do a tremendous amount of rewriting, but I did an awful lot of touching up. And then, of course, there's book designs and cover designs, I should say, this sort of stuff. It takes a while. So I did it. It took me about a year and a half. I hope I've learned. So the next, if the next one comes out, I can't say that it will for sure, but I'm hoping to trim that down a bit. So maybe get it done in a year. I don't even want to mention the hours. That's a well-kept family secret, that one. Safe to say it's a lot.
Can you describe the publishing process? Was it difficult?
Yeah, it you know, to be honest, and I'm not going to say the writing was easy. That would be almost gratuitous. I so much enjoyed the writing. I'm going to steal a line from Craig Johnson, who writes from the writer of Longmire. I was on a Zoom conference with him a while back, and he said it's great fun. He says every day I get to play with my imaginary friends. So I can absolutely agree with that. It's a lot of fun. The sales and marketing, because once you've created this book, well, what do you do with it? And that part of it is, it's not necessarily my forte. It's not something that I overly enjoy, going out there and, saying, hey, check out this book here. In fact, I'll do it right now. And I hate it. So that part of it is no fun at all. Not for me, anyway. Maybe if I can find an agent, they can do it for me.
Now, this next question is definitely a spoiler. So if you haven't read the book yet, you might want to skip this section.
Oh, okay. All right, you people. Put yourself, just mute. Just mute for a minute. Won't take long.
What was your favorite part about the book? Mine was the very end, when Jack asked if he could call Ella Mom.
You know something? I'm going to say this, and I'm not just saying it to agree with her, but when I'm writing, I'll be honest here. I am a very emotional sort of person. So when I'm writing, when I get to a part in the book which stirs my emotions, those are the parts I enjoy most. And I think when we read, this is what we're looking for. We're looking to be taken on a journey. So for me, it's the parts that really bring that emotion to the surface. So I would have to say that very last part was an emotional part for me, because there was a bit of a buildup and we had these different personalities, and we're wondering, gee, are these guys going to actually come together or not. So I don't know if that was one of my favorite. It was certainly right up there with it. So again, anything that touches home to you as a reader and as a writer, those are absolutely your favorite moments. So yeah, I would agree with her. It was certainly one of my most, for sure. And it was getting towards the end of the book, so that also brought some emotion. I was like, phew, we're done.
And our final question, and one that a lot of people have asked, will there be a second book?
Yes, well, I guess in my ramblings here this morning and this afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this, I am working on one. Whether it will be classified as a sequel or a series, I don't really know. There's certainly some of the same characters. I'm working on it now. I'm probably about 13 chapters in, but and to be honest, I hesitate even coming out and saying that. But the question's been asked, so because we never know whether these things are going to get completed or not, whether they'll be finished. So I will answer this and say, I sincerely hope that there will be, and I will be greatly disappointed if there is not.
That was our last question. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be with us and to answer all these questions.
Well, thank you very much, Karli. I really appreciate you taking the time and the library taking the interest to touch base with myself. I'm just one of we've got a few local authors in town, and I really do appreciate it. And I'll have to say, if there's one thing an author, if we enjoy writing, we also enjoy talking about what we've done. So it's been a great half hour here, and I certainly appreciate it. So thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you for doing this again. It was really appreciated.
Well, we'll sign off, and hopefully everybody will pick up the book at the library, and it's there for free.
Yes, you can come by the Fort St. James Public Library and pick up Lady Black. We love supporting local authors.